All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Professional Development for Coaches. We're really excited to have you today on this demo. Just a reminder that this session is being recorded and that recording has started, and that we will be sending you a copy of that recording tomorrow, along with other resources. So today we're going to be looking at some common coaching challenges and then taking a look at two solutions that Teachstone offers. We have a look at class feedback strategies and then instructional support strategies for coaches. So some great opportunities to really support your coaches this school year. And as I said, this is recorded. We're going to send you an email tomorrow with the slides, the recording, and links to other resources that we discussed today. Throughout this presentation, you will be able to chat with each other. Let me just make sure that the chat is on, and use the Q&A box to chat with our hosts with any questions that you may have. And so chat is on now, so feel free, if you'd like to introduce yourself, you may do so. And I think I can turn it over to Gina and Dr. Nina Price now to introduce themselves.
Well, I will go ahead and introduce myself to you. My name is Dr. Nina Price. I am a professional services manager here at Teachstone. I reside in the lovely Dallas, Texas. That is home of America's team, in case you were wondering. So I am happy to be here with each of you today. Thank you for your time and your presence today. And I look forward to engaging with you more about the coaching process.
Thank you, Dr. Price. And my name is Gina Gates, and I'm also coming from a warm climate here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I am the regional director for the Southeast here at Teachstone, and I am excited to be joining today to go over some of our coaching conversations that we're going to be discussing and some coaching solutions. And we will go ahead and get started today. So the first question, as we have, I'm going to monitor the chat. So if you see me looking to the side, I do apologize. I have two screens going, but I do see that we have some folks here from Texas, from Louisiana. I see Arizona, somebody from Chicago, which is my hometown where I was born, Broward County, Florida, which is where I'm currently residing. Montana, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Tennessee, California, North Carolina. Wow, we have people from all over, Dr. Price, so that's really exciting.
Exciting.
So it is. So thank you for everybody who has taken the time to join our call today. We do have a question that we wanted to ask to get us started today, to pause and reflect. As coaches, we do understand that many of you are wearing many hats and you have lots of responsibilities. As coaches, what are some of the most common challenges that you face when you're trying to find training or resources or support for coaches? So we're going to give everybody just a minute or so to chat in and share with us what some of your challenges are when you're looking for training or you're looking for support or resources for coaching. And I will share a little bit more about a story, Dr. Price, that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. But I was once, back in the day, I was once an instructional coach working in Broward County, Florida. And I will say that I transitioned from classroom, I was a classroom teacher, directly into a coaching role. And as a first-time coach, I did not feel fully equipped to handle the coaching responsibilities and the coaching conversations. that come from this new role. And so I think it's a really important topic that we're going to discuss today, on the importance of providing those supports and those resources for coaches. Some of the responses that are coming into the chat is people are saying that teachers and personality conflicts sometimes with the coaches could be one of the challenges. Working with family childcare home providers, needing more support or more access and resources for family childcare. This one, I think this one is really important. It's actually getting to coach through the whirlwind of other things that you're pulled into. We know this. It's like one hat on, take that hat off, put the next hat on. So coaching is just one of many things that you do. Here's another one that I've often heard is using different tools alongside of the class tool. So there are different priorities going on, competing priorities, and coaches don't always have the time and the opportunity to focus just on class. Building relationships with new teachers can sometimes be challenging. Finding time to reflect on the trainings or resources. Everything is very fast paced. So you get trained and then you're on to the very next thing.
One thing I see here, Gina, is the buy-in from teachers. I think that's a very important observation because oftentimes as teachers, you know, we're the queen or the kings of our castle, and we're accustomed to doing things in a particular way, in a particular fashion. This is how I've always done it. And so when a coach comes into your room and they suggest a different method or a different strategy, it's very challenging to get that teacher to see beyond what they've always done and try it a different way. And so I think that's very important to note that building those relationships is going to be critical, because once you build those relationships, trust is embedded in that relationship, and they're more likely to try those new things that you are suggesting for them to do, because there is definitely more than one way to accomplish the goal.
Absolutely. You bring up a great point, Dr. Price. I'm so sorry. Going on to the next section, we have lots of chat going on. We will try to continue to monitor the chat. Please make sure that if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to use the chat as we go forward.
So I'd like to divert your attention to coaches needing coaches, as well as support and training too. So as we embark upon more coaching conversations in today's conversation, I'm interested to hear what some of your coaching concerns are. I see that many of you are coaches, but not all of you are coaches. So I'm curious to hear what some of your concerns are. And there are a few that we hear often that are listed on the screen, such as I worry that I'll hurt the feelings of the teachers that I work with. That is a valid concern. And while we do care about feelings, we also care about the children as well. So let's keep that in mind. And that you might need help creating a goal-setting plan that is attainable. Oftentimes, back in my coaching days, teachers would set very lofty goals. Keep in mind, you only have a small window to work within to be able to accomplish these goals. So we want to make sure that you are setting something that is achievable so that you feel successful by the time that that goal is due to be achieved. Wanting to give better feedback that is both clear and constructive. I think those two things they work hand in hand, being clear and constructive, because clear is kind in my world and probably in your world too. So you want to make sure that teachers understand what the goal is and that you're offering constructive criticism to help them reach the goal. And being able to set better boundaries. That speaks for itself. So when you're having these coaching conversations, you want to make sure that the goals that they're setting are both attainable and achievable. And in order to do that, you have to set boundaries that will allow you to be able to create goals that are sustainable for the long term. And then how can I use class data? That might be my favorite, Gina, because it's what we do, obviously. So using that class data, I use class at home. My kids don't really like it, but it is what I do because it works and I believe in it. And as coaches, I am hopeful that you believe in it as much as you and I do, Gina. So hopefully, coaches, that you are using this class data and you are creating this secondary language to be able to communicate with your teachers. I see a lot of things coming in the chat, so I want to honor what it is that our friends are saying.
So we hear in the chat some more of the concerns that we're hearing about wearing many hats. Class data is beautiful for being objective and stating where we are while being able to grow in meaningful ways. I love that comment because I think that is exactly one of the things that I think as a new coach, it's about what we see. Right? What did you observe? It's clear. Like you said, clear is kind. It's not my opinion of what the teacher is doing. I'm using the tool as my framework, just like I conduct a class observation with the teachers and the child interacting. That process of observing exactly what you see between coach and teacher is also going to help that relationship, because it's not a coach's opinion of what I'm doing. It is exactly what they're seeing in the classroom. So I think that speaks volumes for being able to help build that relationship between the teacher and the coach.
Absolutely.
Being able to pull teachers out of the classroom for effective coaching and follow-up, I know is also a concern that I've heard before. We know that teachers don't always have the ability to leave a classroom to engage in a coaching conversation. But that's such an important part of the coaching process, is that back and forth dialogue that happens between coach and teacher.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's
Absolutely.
go on. The
And,
next.
I'm glad you said that dialogue that happens between coach and teacher, because we refer to that here at Teachstone as the parallel process. I want to be able, as the coach, to impart the wisdom that I would want the teacher to have, so the teacher can in turn be successful with the students that they have in the classroom. And we refer to that as the parallel process. What we do for our little ones, we should do for each other. And in that process, there is not only a requirement for a relationship, there's a requirement for trust. There is a requirement for open dialogue and communication. If I am treating you, Gina, that's kind of like the golden rule. I am going to treat you how I want you to treat me, and in turn, treat the students that you serve and support. And so when we're practicing parallel process in each and everything that we do, it's not just from me to you and not just from you to the students, it's collective. It's all the stakeholders that are involved. And in that process, it is very important that we don't neglect any element of the relationships that occur within those classroom contexts or in the school period. What's necessary for that is that we're providing emotional support. As coaches, we are looked at as being, some type of expert. And while we're all learning, we should all be learning from each other, not just a one-sided learning approach. Making sure that the classrooms are organized so they are established in such a way that teachers are able to teach what is necessary in the moment and be able to transition from one context to another, and without having those additional challenges that might come about from an unorganized environment. As well as instructional support. Are we providing opportunities that integrate, that plan, as well as reflect, so the teachers aren't being told what to do, but they have the autonomy to reflect and to grow so that they can be their best selves and hone their craft the way that it was intended to be?
Absolutely. And, Dr. Price, you said something that really stuck out to me in regards to that parallel process. You said, your kids don't like it when you use class strategies or you do class at home. I actually think about the class tool as really so much more and so far beyond just what you do in a classroom, but really in all aspects of life with all human interactions.
Yes.
I think about even when I go to the grocery store or I go to the doctor's office, every time I have an interaction with a person, class, I can't not do class, right? Class is just, it's
It's
ingrained in
in
me.
me. Yes.
It's in me, and it's just a way in which I feel that human beings should interact with each other, regardless of age, regardless of setting, regardless of the environment. Now, granted, like you said, my kids don't love the fact that, tell me why, or can you explain, that they know, right? They've caught on
Right.
that
Yes.
they've caught on that that's mommy's work talk.
That's
And
work talk. Yes.
but I really do think that the class tool can be used in so many aspects of life, and not just what we do in a classroom between teachers and children. And so when I think about a coaching relationship, I use class as my framework in how I interact with my coachees. And so what I would do with children and teachers is the exact same thing that I would do between coaches and teachers. And so I think that parallel process is so important that we keep that in mind, and we think about that whenever we have those coaching conversations.
Absolutely. I totally agree with everything that you've said. So on top of those effective interactions, Gina, it's important that coaches are meeting competencies in their own coaching practices. So, be curious to know what that might look like in the varying environments that we have here represented all over the nation here in our chat. I love it. But those competencies might include building trust. It definitely includes building relationships with the team. And you can't just go in and expect as a coach that you're just going to make a teacher change. That's not how it works. It'd be great if it did, but there has to be some buy-in in order to enact change in those environments. And before you can have that buy-in, you have to start building that relationship. And that relationship is, I think of relationships like Lego blocks. You connect the Lego blocks one on top of the other. It's a scaffolded approach until you are able to create some structure that is recognizable. So, and that is not built from the top up, it's built from the bottom up. And when you're maintaining that balance, the taller the Lego blocks get, it starts to, I think of it like, you remember those Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down?
Yes.
Am I dating myself with age?
Well, I know it, so then you've dated me too.
But that's how I look at it. The taller your structure gets, the more support that it needs to have. And so I'm wondering, how many of you are teachers in this group? Thank you, Rashida. How many of you are teachers, and how many of you are working with teachers in this group? Because I know that we all have different hats to wear. And as a coach, you wear so many hats throughout the day, and they're interchangeable as the day goes on. I see a lot of both. Okay, I take my many hats off that I wear too for the educators that are working in this environment. Not only is it challenging, but the task is daunting. And I thank you all for doing the work that you do. But as you continue to work with teachers and hone your craft as teachers, I am going to encourage you to continue to establish those boundaries and continue to build relationships. Because sometimes, over time, if you've had the same coach as I often had through my years of coaching, you start to build friendships. So it's not just a working relationship, it is a friendship relationship. And I still maintain some of those friendships outside of the coaching environment that I once had, but making sure that those boundaries are clear. When I go into a classroom, they know that I have my coach hat on. Yes, we can talk about what you did on Friday, but we're also going to talk about this instructional practice as well. So and making sure that you're responsible in your conversations, and make sure that the main thing remains the main thing.
Absolutely. Dr. Price, I have told you I was going to share a little story with you about my very first coaching experience. So
Mhm.
I was fresh out of the classroom and I took a position as an instructional coach. And, sometimes there is an assumption that because you are an effective teacher, that you're automatically going to be an effective coach, that you
Mhm.
know how to do it. And just because I can teach children doesn't necessarily mean that I know how best to engage with a coachee as a coach. And
Right.
I learned very, very quickly that I was not fully ready to enter this world of coaching.
Mhm.
Um, and I walked into first day on the job, my very first classroom with a teacher who had probably been through, 12 or 14 different coaches over the years. And I'm just going to use the name Miss Linda so that everybody remains, anonymous. And Miss Linda was not happy to see me. She did not welcome me with open arms. She was not pleasant to me, and she was quite annoyed that I was there in her classroom. And I was surprised. This is how naive I was. I was very surprised. I thought, well, I'm here to help and I'm here to coach. And why wouldn't somebody, welcome me into their room? And I was quickly, I learned very quickly that not every teacher is going to welcome you with open arms, and not every teacher is ready to hear feedback or encourages or wants feedback. And I learned that day that I needed to learn some new skills that I did not yet have. Um,
Yes.
and it took some time and it took some training. It doesn't come naturally sometimes. And that's the thing that I think is such a key um, point, that we need to remember, that just because you are in the coach role doesn't mean that you also don't need professional development for the role that you're in. Professional development is not a reflection on I'm doing something poorly. It's an opportunity for everybody to grow. So I learned quickly that day that I needed to learn some new strategies with being able to coach teachers. So we're going to get into one of the solutions, or one of the offerings, the supports that Teachstone offers for coaches on being able to provide effective feedback to teachers. So as a coach, remember I said I was working with Miss Linda, and I clearly did not know the best way to approach Miss Linda, and I did not have all of the tools in my tool belt that I needed in order to not only work with her, but how on earth was I going to provide feedback to Miss Linda if she didn't even want to hear it? So we're going to get a little bit into feedback strategies. It's really not about feeling. It's some of the common struggles that we hear from coaches. We hear that, coaches will say, I don't really feel confident ahead of giving that feedback. I'm not sure if the way I'm phrasing the feedback is going to come off as too harsh, or is going to be received in a negative way. So we hear coaches say that they don't feel confident in giving that feedback. It's also really about the logistics. And somebody mentioned this in the chat, that like, when do you give the feedback? When do you find the time? When is it appropriate to give immediate feedback? When is it best to wait a bit? When can we pull teachers out of classrooms to be able to have coaching conversations? So that's another common struggle that we hear. The other thing that is so important, and we talk about this when we do this in the classroom, when we're giving feedback to children, feedback needs to be individualized. We need to differentiate feedback for children. And it's the same when we're working with teachers. Not all teachers are going to be receptive, nor are they going to benefit in the manner in which feedback is provided if it's all the same for everybody. Miss Linda had a style about her, and it took me a long time to learn her style and what worked best for her. And it took several months, really, quite honestly, several months, until we got to the point where I'm like, okay, that's really what's going to work best with Miss Linda. Now, Miss Stephanie, another teacher that I work with, come, give me feedback, tell me what I should do. So very different approaches to both. So I think that's key, that we hear that coaches sometimes need help in being able to differentiate the feedback. And also we hear the challenge that, educators they may not have that understanding and their readiness, right? Who's ready to take the feedback in? Who is not ready to take the feedback in? And what can we do at those different points? If I'm working with a teacher who is ready for feedback, well, giving that feedback is likely a lot easier. If I'm working with a teacher who is not ready to receive feedback, it's going to look and feel a little different, and it may take you a lot longer to get there. So class feedback strategies, it is a one-day training, and this is really what the training is designed. It's to help you feel more positive and confident in going into your next coaching conversation. I needed support when I was a new coach. And even if you're not a new coach, somebody who has been coaching for several years can still benefit from this one-day training, because it really does provide you with those tools to be able to give feedback more confidently, and so that you have a better understanding too. It really does help you recognize what the readiness level is of that teacher based on what the teacher is saying, based on what the teacher is doing. It helps you to really understand who is ready, and how do you approach teachers who are ready, and how do you approach teachers who are not quite ready, and what can we do to help them or get them to the point where they are ready to receive feedback. Some of the things that we cover during this training is we do really focus on feedback loops. You think about that quality of feedback in the pre-K tool, and we think about how do those feedback loops look. So we're really going to help provide that framework for the feedback loops. We also, during the training, we're going to practice those feedback sessions. So you're going to pair up with each other. One's going to play teacher, one's going to play coach, and we're going to practice what a feedback session might look like. And then you're also going to have the chance to explore some new strategies to really differentiate feedback based on the teacher's readiness level. And so what it looks like in practice, again, I covered some of this in the last slide. I have a tendency to do that. I give too much information too soon. But during this training, you're going to explore what the teacher's readiness levels are. You'll have teachers that might say to you, please give me ideas. I need strategies. We've all worked with teachers who are very eager, and they're very open, and they want ideas, they want strategies, they want to improve. Then you work with teachers, and you'll hear and see something that might look like, well, I could be better at this, but XYZ. I could do this better, but there's always an outside influence that is contributing to the teacher's recognition that they're not able to grow or improve in this area, because there's something externally that's preventing that. I like to say that those teachers are kind of on the fence. It sounds like they're open, but they have another excuse or another reason or another something that's contributing to that being fully open. And then you have teachers who, I've been doing this 20 years. This is my method. I've done this all along. It's worked all these years. I'm not going to change my practice now. And we know that there are teachers like that we call them the not ready to receive feedback. But that's really what you're going to do, is you're going to explore all of those different levels of readiness. You'll help in the training. We're going to work on planning for conferences. Planning is key, just like we say to teachers. You can't just walk into a classroom and wing it, because what's going to happen with teachers and children if a teacher doesn't have a plan? The same thing between coach and teacher. It's really important that we make a plan and have a plan in place. We're going to practice facilitating those feedback loops. Remember, I said we're going to partner up. Somebody's going to play coach, somebody's going to play teacher, and then we're going to switch. And also we're going to help with that goal setting and creating an action plan. So just some more logistical information about class feedback strategies. In the training itself, we do focus and we use examples from the pre-K class tool. But one thing to point out that I think is so important, because sometimes coaches see pre-K and they shy away from it, especially if they're a coach that's not working with a pre-K teacher or pre-K age level. The thing is the strategies that you learn during the feedback strategies training are strategies that'll translate to all age levels. It does not matter if you're coaching pre-K or you're coaching infant and toddler. In the training, we're going to use pre-K examples, but the strategies themselves that you're learning are age neutral, and they are strategies that can be used for any age level. The training is offered in English, and we offer it in really two modalities. It's always going to be a facilitated training, but we can do facilitated online via Zoom for group trainings, or it can be done in person. If you're an organization that's interested in having an in-person training, we absolutely can do the training in person as well. The other nice thing about the flexibility with this training is individuals. So if you are just one or two coaches within your organization, you can actually purchase just individual seats. At our trainings, we offer them once a quarter. Our next training is October the 18th. If you are an organization that has a large group of coaches, we would then likely encourage a group training for your group, because it will be more cost effective to do a group training if your group is very large. And then some of the materials that you'll receive as part of this training, you'll receive the feedback strategies participant guide, the dimensions guide, and you will have your certificate of completion, and then 2-month access to the online content via my Teachstone. And Dr. Price, I had not monitored the chat to see if there were any questions about feedback strategies as I was going through this. So I apologize. It's hard for me to do two things at once.
So there is a question: is the price per person or per group?
So the price that's listed here is the per person price. So it's $655 if you wanted to purchase one of the seats at our October 18th training. And then the group price option, I'm probably not going to get these numbers right, but I believe it's $5,000 for virtual and $6,500 for in-person. I will double check those numbers, so don't write those down just yet. And Isabella, if I know she's helping, if you can peek on the prices for virtual and in-person for the group set, but this is the individual person price.
Suzanne is, let me clarify, Suzanne, your question. Are you asking if there are CEUs for this, or I'm not sure I understand your question. And as far as the link has been added to the chat for you. Thank you, Isabella. So you can register or get more information using the link. And you said, where is the face-to-face training? Well, you'd have to see what the next trainings. If you're not familiar with the Teachstone site, you can go on and look at all of the trainings that are upcoming and see where the trainings are being held, when they're being held, and the times. So as far as specifics about your particular area, that would be on the Teachstone website. Registration not available. Gina, do you know if that has been filled? Are we at capacity on that? I don't know the answer to that, Melody, but thank you for pointing that out.
So I just checked, and according to what I'm seeing, we still show capacity in that training. So at the end of this slide, at the end of the slides, you're going to find my email at the end. Please send me an email directly, and I can confirm, but as of right now, the October 18th training date is still showing as available seats.
Kathy is asking if, I believe she's saying, does Florida get a different price?
Florida does not. These are the Teachstone hosted trainings that October the 18th is a Teachstone hosted training. Florida has its own that they purchase as part of their state contract. And so those trainings are done and they're not advertised on our website.
And Kathy asked if they have taken the training before, can they take it again?
They can take it again, but there will not be, I should double check on this. I think there's only one certificate of completion. So once they've completed it once,
I believe you're accurate in that regard. They would only get one certificate of completion.
Okay, perfect. We will go ahead and continue to monitor the chat. And if there's anybody that has additional questions, go ahead and continue to add them. I'm going to turn over the next section over to Dr. Price so that we can go on with our instructional support strategies training.
Absolutely. Instructional support domain is my absolute favorite because for me, this is where the rubber meets the road, I guess you want to call it that, where the main focus of learning often occurs because there's the conversations, there's the questions, there's the guidance that is brought into this particular domain. And it is typically the domain that is often tagged as having the most room for growth. And in our experience, Gina, I'm sure that you can attest to this as well, that teachers and administrators often want to focus here because these are where the scores typically are the lowest. And there is a misconception of what educators can't do instructional support in the moment, making it feel unattainable. Just not true. While I get that it is probably challenging, I believe that educators can do all things. And that's just how I feel because I've been an educator for a very long time. So I do want to take the attention off of the verbiage and look at the actual data on the chart. So in the particular domains that live in the instructional support domain, there's emotional support, there's classroom organization, and instructional support. And if you are familiar with class, then you know that there is some interrelatedness with these particular domains that live in the instructional support domain. So there's the mean that has been listed for you there for emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. And then there's a standard deviation. Mean is the average. Standard deviation is how the variation of how close it lives to the mean. And then there's the minimum and the maximum. So if you are like me and statistics almost kept you from graduating, then this information may not really mean much to you, but what it is saying is that in order for students to be successful, all of these areas are connected and they have to work in concert together in order to have a holistic view of the effectiveness of the classroom. That's really all it's saying. They work together in partnership. And so with that being said, there are data that is related to the descriptive statistics. Again, almost kept me from graduating, Gina. So what this is basically saying is that emotional support, the mean, lives a little bit beyond the bell curve. If you're familiar with the bell curve, will you be receiving the? Yes, you will be receiving this information. So what this means, a lot of technical jargon that says that the interconnectedness of the relationships that exist within the classroom help support the overall effectiveness of the classroom setting. So I will not bore you by a lot of technical terms because that is really not what we need as educators. We need relationships and we need conversations. So there is that. All right. So In our relatedness as educators, the instructional support strategies for coaches ultimately build the competency that we need to continue to coach our teachers to success, as well as building confidence in the instructional support domain in the one-day training. In this training, educators will have the opportunity to deepen the understanding of the instructional support domain. They will also have the opportunity to learn new strategies for some and perhaps build on the strategies that they already have for supporting educators as they increase the effectiveness of their interactions within the domain. Additionally, this particular training will help drive teachers' success in understanding how to best engage children in critical thinking activities. And I am sure that we can all benefit from those strategies because critical thinking is something that is a challenge and will probably continue to be a challenge as we are competing with technology. So if we're able to build a bridge that helps them think as well as use technology, I think we're on the road to success. So what does it look like overall with the 4 domains? There are the essentials. Those essentials help to deepen the knowledge of the instructional support interactions and get comfortable explaining those to teachers. Uh-oh.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So the we're here. And concept development. What does concept development look like? This is where teachers and educators will learn concrete strategies for helping teachers boost children's higher level thinking skills. And I think we can all attest to how critical that is. Then the quality of feedback, as we've already discussed. This helps us to, as educators, to help teachers improve the feedback that they are providing to children in those instructional conversations that we have. And language modeling. In this particular section, we will gain strategies for improving the ways that teachers facilitate as well as stimulate language use in the classroom. As we continue to talk about the instructional support strategies for coaches, again, the age levels that we focus on, pre-K, however, that can be used to tailor to at different age levels, but it is presented in English. It is offered in both in-person as well as online. The cost is the same at $655 per person. Our next class date is November 7th. In this particular training, participants will receive a guide that allows you to reflect and goal set while you're in the training, and you'll keep that guide so that you can look back and refer back to the conversations and the goals that you've set while you were in the training. It provides coaches with resources that includes feedback prompts, an opportunity to role play, conference forms that you can reuse if you make copies, and other documents that you can use to continue your coaching journey. It also provides educators with resources to support effective lesson planning and be able to use those strategies that you learn in an effective way throughout your coaching tenure with your teachers. There's a question from Denise, will there be training added to the week when the Interact is in San Diego? Oh, that's a good question, and I do not have the answer to that. Gina, do you know?
I do not know the answer, but I will definitely check. Denise, if you want to send me an email just as a reminder to check on that for you, my email will be included here at the end of the slides, and then I will get an answer to your question.
And I can just jump in and say that for Interact, typically the sessions are a little bit more broad and not specific things that you would pay for as a separate training. So we can follow up on that, but I don't believe that that will be on the schedule this year. Instead, they're probably more reflective sessions on the topics that you might discuss in that kind of a training. So still a very worthwhile experience from people who are really experts in class.
I want to add that we refer to this as ISS, Instructional support strategies for coaches is very interactive. There are a lot of hands-on activities. There's a lot of conversations that you're encouraged to have and participate in that will really get you engaged in the process of coaching and how to use and apply those strategies while you're in a coaching session so that your teachers get the most from your conversations.
All righty. Thank you, Dr. Price.
Welcome.
Just checking the chat box. You know, it's not easy to monitor the chat and to talk and the slides all at one time. So I'm I'm wearing multiple hats today, trying to do all of this.
And you're doing a good job, Gina. Good job.
Oh,
And I think we're all caught up on questions too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So just as a little recap, to close my story with Miss Linda, because it wouldn't be complete if I did not tell you how the year went. So I told you how the year started when I started coaching Miss Linda. The year ended with Miss Linda and I being the best of friends, very close. Miss Linda loved when Miss Gina would come into her class towards the end of the year. But I will tell you that it probably took months to build that relationship with Miss Linda. We had lots of social conversations in the beginning because we were really working on building trust. And I provided very little feedback to Miss Linda early on because I knew that she was not ready to receive any sort of feedback. As the year went on and the relationship got to be better and stronger and trust started to build, Miss Linda began to open up and became more open to receiving feedback. We still talk to this day. She is still teaching and will be retiring within the next couple of years. But it was a very great experience, even though I felt that it started off rocky and I didn't know what I was doing. I will say that it was really a learning opportunity for myself and really in deepening my abilities as a coach. I did not have feedback strategies nor ISS training prior to starting my coaching journey. I later was able to take part in both of those trainings. So I, as a coach, did complete and attend a feedback strategies training along with the instructional support strategies. And those were two huge pieces of support for me as a new coach, because I knew that I did not feel confident about my abilities in coaching and providing feedback to teachers. So it's truly really meant for foundational mentoring skills. We recognize that coaches have a lot that they're focused on and a lot that they're doing. So making sure that we give you the ability to have those mentoring skills, also to help build capacity within your organizations. As we grow and as you take on more new staff, being able to have more coaches better supported, it will help build the capacity. It's also important to feel empowered to give more meaningful feedback, and also in driving that success aligned to class so that you're able to share with educators. So just a quick recap, the two trainings that we talked about today in detail, the first one being class feedback strategies. It is a one-day training. The next date is October the 18th. I think it was, yes, October the 18th. And instructional support strategies, which is also a one-day training. And the next date was November, Dr. Price?
7th.
November 7th.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I
November
just
7th.
wanted to jump in here and say that I was able to find the pricing information for feedback strategies for the in-person. So virtual for a group up to 16 participants is $5,000, and then $6,500 for an in-person delivery with up to 16 participants. And I can see if I can pull the other one too. But
I think it's the same, Isabella.
it's probably the same.
Okay, great. So then the pricing that I stated earlier was right.
It
So
was correct. You were on it.
okay, good.
As always.
Thank you. And so that's that pricing that Isabella just gave. That is for a group feedback strategies training or a group ISS or instructional support strategies training.
Yeah.
Each of those 5,000 for a facilitated training that is conducted online via Zoom, and 6,500 for a facilitated training that is conducted in person at your location. So that is, let's say somebody in Illinois wants a feedback strategies training up to 16, we would come to you and do an in-person training at your location. And
I was able to confirm the prices are the same, so that pricing applies to both. So Gina is once again correct.
That doesn't always happen though. Questions. We're gonna, let me see if there's any new questions in the chat box. I think we covered most of the questions. Just to remind everybody that you will receive a copy of the slide deck tomorrow, so that you have this information at your fingertips. And if you would like to reach out, oh, I thought my email was here. I apologize. It's not included, but I will give you my email right now. Isabella, can you add my email to the chat? Thank you. If you do have additional questions regarding feedback strategies training or instructional support strategies training, please feel free to reach out to me. I can help connect you with a class representative for your area. The way that we're divided up, we cover different parts of the country, so I may or may not be the right person to help you get a training at your location if that's something that you choose to do. But I can certainly connect you to the person that could help you with that. And Dr. Price, do you have any closing comments that you want to make today?
I would just like to thank the numerous participants from across the nation for joining us today. There are plenty of things that you could have been doing, but you have taken time to sit with us and gather this information. So I appreciate that. It means the world to me because I know that you're very, very busy. So thank you for being here.
I also thank you all for joining us today. And please be on the lookout for a copy of this slide deck. And we thank you for all of the work that you are doing with teachers around the country to better support all children in classrooms.
Absolutely.
And before we go, I just wanted to pop in and say that today's session, because it is a demo, does not come with a certificate of attendance. But if you are interested in more live events with Teachstone, we have another webinar coming up at the end of the month. You may have seen it. We actually just changed the date. And so if you registered, you will be getting a notification about that today. But we have a really fascinating presentation on resiliency and getting through the school year stronger together here at the end of September. And that one does come with a certificate of attendance. And then, as both of them mentioned, all the resources from today, the links I shared, as well as a few additional links, plus the slides, will come in an email tomorrow.
I think Suzanne has her hand raised and a question.
Let's see here. Okay, that was
she said it was a mistake. Okay.
And Stacy, I am grabbing your email so that we can send that. Or Juliet, I got you. And I saw one other question. How long in hours is the in-person training?
It is a
training. I believe it's 6 hours, 6.5 hours.
6.5 hours. Yes. And that information will come in the slides and everything tomorrow.
And Dr. Price, it's 6.5 hours of content, but for the day, we'll block it as an 8-hour day, correct? So that
Right,
the
because that does include a lunch and 2 breaks.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, everybody. I don't see any additional questions. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.